The night she decided to follow him, the elevator doors closed too slowly, as if daring her to rethink the quiet curiosity that had been growing in her chest for weeks. Margaret had built companies, broken ceilings, and survived boardrooms that smelled of fear and power. Yet none of that prepared her for the unease she felt watching the building's janitor swipe his card and step into the rain-soaked street outside their Chicago headquarters. What if this were you? She wondered in that fragile moment, noticing how easily assumptions are made when success blinds compassion. If you were standing where she stood, would you turn away and let routine swallow the truth? Or would you follow the pull that refused to let go? Margaret had noticed him first in small, forgettable ways, the kind most people never register. His name was Thomas, stitched in blue thread on a faded uniform, always arriving before sunrise and leaving long after most lights had gone dark. He moved with careful patience, never rushing, never cutting corners, wiping fingerprints from glass walls that executives leaned against while talking about growth and margins. There was a tired dignity about him, the kind that came from carrying too much alone. Margaret told herself it was nothing, just another employee passing through her empire. But something about the way he paused at the company daycare window each evening, glancing inside as if counting blessings he could not afford, lingered in her thoughts. That curiosity sharpened the night she stayed late reviewing layoffs she knew would devastate families she would never meet. As she gathered her coat, she saw Thomas waiting by the service elevator, holding a small, worn backpack instead of the usual cleaning cart. When their eyes briefly met, he nodded politely, and she felt a sudden, irrational guilt she could not name. Outside, instead of heading to her car, Margaret watched him walk away into the cold, his shoulders hunched, not just against the weather, but against something heavier. Without fully understanding why, she followed at a distance, heels clicking softly on the wet sidewalk, heart pounding like she was crossing a line she could never uncross. Thomas walked several blocks to a bus stop lit by a flickering street lamp. Margaret sat in her car nearby, engine off, watching as he boarded with exact change and took a seat near the back. She followed again, keeping 2 rows between them, feeling absurd and invasive, yet unable to stop. The bus traveled through neighborhoods that changed with every mile, glass towers giving way to boarded storefronts and tired houses leaning into each other for support. When Thomas finally got off, it was in front of a run-down apartment complex where paint peeled like old scars. Margaret parked across the street and watched him disappear inside, telling herself this was enough, that she had seen all there was to see. But then a light came on in a ground-floor window, and through thin curtains, she saw a small silhouette rush forward. A child, no more than 7, launched into Thomas's arms with a force that made him stumble back, laughing silently as he steadied them both. Margaret felt her throat tighten. Inside that dim room, she saw more clearly than any report could ever show. Thomas set his backpack down and pulled out a stack of library books and a paper bag of groceries. He moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this alone for a long time, heating soup, helping with homework, folding laundry on a couch that doubled as a bed. There was no television glow, no distractions, just the quiet labor of love and survival. As Margaret sat there, tears blurred her vision, and questions crashed through her mind. What if this were your father, working invisible hours so you could sleep with a full stomach? What choices would you make if the world had already decided your worth, without ever knowing your story? She realized how often she had spoken about values in polished speeches while ignoring the lives that upheld them. Watching Thomas tuck the child into bed on a mattress on the floor, whispering comfort without words, broke something open in her chest that success had sealed shut. Over the following weeks, Margaret could not unsee what she had witnessed. Every decision felt heavier, every signature carrying faces instead of numbers. She learned, quietly, that Thomas was a widower, that his wife, Rebecca, had died from a sudden illness 2 years earlier, leaving him to raise their son, Caleb, on a salary that barely stretched across rent, food, and bus fare. He had taken the janitor job after losing better-paying work during the pandemic, grateful for health insurance even as pride burned away. Margaret saw him differently now, not as part of the background, but as a man fighting daily battles with grace no one applauded. Change did not come as a grand gesture at first. It came in small, deliberate steps. Margaret canceled the layoff she could, rerouted funds she had once reserved for bonuses into an emergency assistance program no one could trace back to her. She ensured that janitorial staff received raises and access to education benefits, framing it as long overdue equity rather than charity. Still, she knew this was not enough. The image of that cramped apartment and that child's thin blanket haunted her quiet moments. One evening, months later, Margaret visited the complex again, this time with clarity instead of secrecy. She watched Thomas return home, still tired, still careful, and understood that dignity meant offering help without stripping it away. Through a trusted intermediary, she arranged for Thomas to be offered a facilities management training program, one that matched his skills and paid enough to breathe again. She funded a scholarship for Caleb in Rebecca's name, ensuring that the future would not be another locked door. Thomas never knew who stood behind these changes, only that something unseen had shifted in his favor. The true transformation, however, happened inside Margaret. She began spending time walking the floors after hours, learning names, listening without agenda. She remembered why she had started her career before ambition hardened into armor. Kindness, she learned, was not a weakness in leadership, but its deepest strength. Regret followed close behind. For the years she had overlooked suffering hidden in plain sight, but hope grew stronger, nourished by the belief that it was never too late to choose differently. On a quiet spring morning, Margaret saw Thomas in the lobby, standing taller, smiling as Caleb waved goodbye before heading to school. Their laughter echoed off marble walls, and Margaret felt tears rise again, this time not from sorrow, but from grace. Lives had changed, including her own, not because of power, but because of a moment of seeing and a choice to care. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and share what part of this journey stayed with you the most and why it mattered to your heart. If this story truly touched you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, so more stories of quiet courage, second chances, and unseen kindness can find the people who need them most.